So yeah, this definitely isn't a how-to session. Really, it's more of a how not to, or I'm actually hoping that you will help me think about undergraduate research and how I might be able to do it better. Because actually this picture here is interesting. I wanted a pretty picture anyway, but I'm wondering, what do you see here? Yeah, okay, there's a big salamander. They do look happy, don't they? Yes, good. All right. So this is undergraduate research. All right. And these are all students who I got money for through the ACA, and they worked for me over the summer. And we did lots of field work. They spent a lot of time in the river, caught a lot of hellbenders. This is probably one of the biggest ones we've seen. Having a fantastic research experience, clearly. But is that so? What was the outcome? Did it really pay off? Did they actually get what they needed? Well, one of them is in med school, and the other three graduated and ended up doing non-sciencey kinds of things. So, was it successful or not? Was it a good research experience for them? Did it accomplish anything? I don't know, what do you think?
They became better informed citizens.
Yeah, as a learning experience, I think it probably was pretty good for them. Yeah.
That they know that all knowledge comes from someplace.
Mm-hmm.
There's an application for it, but that you've got to discover something in the field.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a very sterile environment that we have books and paper.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really, yeah, that's my justification
Yeah.
for taking people to.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, why do research when you could spend all your time teaching and that's what Lee values? Well, for me, it's because I just love doing science. I mean, the process of doing science, of learning. The only way I can do that is by doing research. Well, I can read more books, I suppose, but I like to do. I like to actually practice science. I like to be able to learn things, and I think learn things by asking questions and answering the questions myself, rather than relying on someone else to do it. So I think for us as faculty, undergraduate research can be really, really valuable. It should also be really valuable for them. And so what I thought I'd do is just talk a little bit about where I see some of the challenges of working with undergraduates at Lee, with the kind of students we have, the kind of facilities, opportunities we have, and I really want to know what you think, because I've definitely got some issues I've got to work through, and I need some help. So I'm really hoping that you will talk a little bit about your experiences, especially if your department does a fair bit of student research, like psychology does. And then for the folks who are in humanities or in theology, you may have a whole different set of issues that make working with undergraduates quite difficult. So I'd really like to hear your challenges and see if we can think of some ways of dealing with them. Why do you want to do undergraduate research? You came here this morning presumably because you've thought about it. You want to do it or you are doing it, so tell me. And you can split this up into selfish and altruistic. Because let's be honest here, there's a bit of both going on there. So what do you think? What have you got?
Labor force.
Labor! Okay, slave labor. Okay.
My wife says I do it so I can get out of town.
All right, explore and have fun. Cabin fever. All right, yes, I like that. Yes, get out.
Frankly, I'm not brilliant, and after 9 months in the classroom, just going through the books, my brain is.
Yep. Okay.
And I want to go
Yep.
out and beat my body a little bit.
Escape the
And after
classroom.
3 months out in the field, I'm ready to go back to the classroom.
Okay, good. I like all this. Why else do you want to do undergraduate research?
Michael, in some of our fields, we have an obligation to our students.
Okay.
Just to give them the classroom experience, that's something
Right.
we can give them a
Sure.
small window.
Okay. All right. So a student need.
Yeah, for graduate
Okay.
school,
Grad
it's really
school.
valuable.
Okay. My writing's terrible, my apologies, but anyway, it'll do. So what are we looking, what in that case, in terms of altruistic, in terms of benefiting the students, what outcomes do, I mean, why, let's be more specific, why we want that, what do they need?
I think
Yes,
so
so, come on.
You find a student who's really brilliant
Mhm.
and you want to take them
To the next level.
step.
Okay. Okay, so development of your student.
It's a great way to connect them to outside school.
Yeah.
I mean, we're forced
Right.
to this, or
Yeah.
The skills are transferable from, a lot of different areas.
Right, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's certainly the approaches that I take. I'm doing it is because, okay, I want to get them potentially to grad school, but if not to grad school, then indeed to develop thinking, to develop attention to detail. I mean, one of the things I really work on in the lab is quality control. Paying real close attention to detail and being able to say something doesn't look right, and if I don't do something about it, I will have wasted a great deal of time. So that hopefully is a good transferable skill that they'll take with them. And this element of connecting them to other professionals, that's been a big deal for me, trying to get them connected with the Forest Service or TWRA, the state, or whatever it is. At the end of the day, hopefully you can start writing much better reference letters for them if they've done some good research. And funnily enough, actually, our students who do research are more likely to get into medical school, even though that's not exactly a research career, but it clearly matters. Any other altruistic reasons you guys can think?
A love for learning, for different
Right.
kinds of
Different, yeah, sure. I think that's right. I mean, again, I think that is so important because, at least in the sciences, it's been cookbook science up till now. It's been let's read and regurgitate, as opposed to let's explore, let's discover, let's ask questions. I don't know about you, but for me, my best thinking is done when I write. When I pose, I've got a question, I've got a problem, and I work through it and I write, and I need that process to develop the ability to think. So I think that really helps too. All right, let's come back to the selfish motives.
I think in some departments, research, like our department, research really is valued because they know how important it is to students
Okay.
to go on.
All right, so,
It's not just teaching that's valued.
right,
Research.
okay, so I don't know where to put that. I'm going to put it in the middle somewhere. But okay, let's call it selfish, because if I'm meeting a student need, then I'm going to be valued in my department. Okay, so.
Promotion and tenure, kind of.
All right, promotion and tenure. Well, this is interesting because traditionally, this has almost been seen as an obstacle to promotion and tenure. If you were too focused on research, then you were going to be, that wasn't welcome. So there's a balancing act there. But on the other hand, if you're successful at working with undergraduates, then that's good. Definitely helps.
I would think for the, I guess it would be selfish, but when I was in grad school, we were trained that was what it was like a need that you
Right.
needed
Mhm.
to
Right.
research, and
Yeah.
if you didn't, you were floundering. So
Yes,
it's like a
yeah.
self-actualization
Right, sure.
idea to it, to be
Yeah.
the best.
So avoid stagnation.
Self-actualization.
It's a very positive term, isn't it? Yes. All right, it's so good, we're going to put it down here.
So Michael, another thing you can do is you can work with your groupies. And you have these students, right, that are just kind of there with you, and they kind of like you. You can do stuff with them. I mean,
Right.
you don't have to deal with a 30 or 60, whatever. You can do it in 3, 4, and 5.
Right, selective and fun. Okay, because it is fun to have some good students that you get on with and go a lot deeper. Okay, all right, well, I think you guys have got most of the things that I thought of. Yeah. I don't know, this is just one other picture. This is maybe the first or second year I was working with Lee students with Hellbenders, and Fielding's he's a doctor now, so definitely a success story. And these are kids from high schools that are at Tremont, which is an educational institute in the Smokies. And I think this was one of the really great things that we were able to do with our students, was get them interacting in the community and passing on this enthusiasm and excitement about, you know, natural resources, natural treasures. So these students absolutely loved jumping in the river with me and my students and I. They were completely useless, these kids here, at catching hellbenders, partly because we're having to lift rocks that are huge, and so there's a size issue. But there was definitely a really very strong connection, and we would hang out at lunchtime and sit at their table and eat with them. And I think one of the things that happened there was, I think the reputation of Lee actually was enhanced by what we were doing. I wasn't just connecting students with professionals. I mean, in some ways we were connecting professionals with Lee, and so we were advancing the institution as well. So I think that can be a really positive outcome of working with undergraduates and getting them outside the classroom, as always. So I like that a lot. All right, the selfish motives. All right, okay, now you guys didn't mention this, but for me, one of my selfish motives is when I get an award through the ACA, a Ledford Award, for example, which is for student research, the students get paid quite generously. I mean, $8.50 an hour, not too bad. If they work most of the summer, they're going to come out with $3,000 or $4,000. And there's also a $1,000 supply line that I get. 17th, next week. Now you can do it. Have a go. Yep, definitely it's not too late if you're thinking about, if you've got a student from Appalachia, that's their one criteria is they have to have come from a Appalachian high school. Otherwise they've got no chance.
Are we Appalachian?
Yes. Yeah, Bradley County certainly is.
But it has to be the student.
The student has to be, yes. Yeah, and surprisingly, that's generally not been a problem for me. I've just had an awful lot of students. So maybe because we're working in the mountains and there's a natural attraction there. So anyway, for each student, I get $1,000 to play with for supplies and all the rest. Okay, so put a few of these together with a few other grants and all that, and you end up with quite a decent pot of money to play with. Okay, and you can leverage that against, you know, potentially other things too. So at one point I was applying for these for my students and for one of the ACA postdoctoral fellowships, one of their summer fellowships, which is worth about $6,000. And you kind of could leverage one against the other. You know, getting one helped you get the other, really. So it was actually reasonably. The reality is, it's easier probably to write a science proposal as long as you don't get too technical, given that the committee will be a mixture of faculty from different backgrounds. Sorry?
How many of these letters have you received? I mean, of course, by students.
Well, I mean, right now I'm limited to 2 per project. Back in the day, I could apply for just about as many as I wanted to. I'm not probably a dozen or so, at least. I guess a dozen students of mine have.
So you're limited right now.
Limited right now to 2 per project. You could be smart, you could be inventive and come up with a few different projects, or work with another faculty member. So you could end up with putting a team together, potentially. But yes, 2 per project
The
at
selection
the moment.
committee also includes people from research universities, so the proposals need to be pretty good.
That's been one of the challenges with the humanities proposals or the psychology proposals. When I was on the committee, I haven't been on the committee for maybe 2 or 3 years, but you know, it was easy for the science ones because you could write a clear hypothesis-driven proposal. You could have your your strong question, your hypothesis, and how you're going to go about testing it. And it seemed as though some of the other disciplines just weren't as specific. They came across a bit vague. So if you can write quite specifically, quite hypothesis driven, hopefully that works for your discipline. Maybe it doesn't. But I think, as always, what committees are looking for is a sure thing. They want to know that the money they're spending is going to pay off, rather than go into a general slush fund and get used for who knows what. So if they're pretty confident that there's a clear project with clear goals and clear outcomes, then that's all that really matters. So anyway, think about that. Okay, professional glory, yes. And there's no doubt that the research I'm doing has paid off for me professionally, in terms of my status both in the institution and outside. I get to be a journal editor and do all those kinds of things, partly because of the research that I'm doing. And it has snowballed. I mean, when I started in 2004, it was small organizations. I mean, the ACA, it was the Forest Service. Well, I guess the Forest Service isn't exactly small. But anyway, small amounts of money. I really had to piece together little grants from lots of different places to put together a decent pot of money. And I just couldn't get the state, TWRA, to come to the party. And I was outraged, really, because I was giving them all this free data. I mean, I was doing really good work, collecting all this great data, which I was required to give them because of my permit, my collection permit. They were getting it all for free. And I simply couldn't persuade them to put some money into this project. But I think the reputation of what we were doing, it started to speak for itself. And with a change in leadership in the state, all of a sudden it was, we need to know more about hellbenders. Who are the experts? And they picked me, and they picked the National Zoo, and they picked an MTSU professor, and invited us to apply for a grant. I mean, it was, that means you've got it, right? You just have to say what you're going to do, pretty much. So that definitely paid off for me. Made it a whole lot easier. Promotion, yeah, we've talked about that. And this is something we chatted about at various ACA meetings back a few years ago, when there was a kind of transfer of leadership. And one of the questions was, is research, is it a good thing or a bad thing for faculty at these kinds of institutions? Is it ultimately selfish? Is it all about prima donna faculty just doing their thing? Or actually, does it really pay off in retaining young, talented faculty at a place like Lee, where they wouldn't perhaps thrive otherwise? So you think so? Yeah?
I think it's one of the things that helps us to, helps me to thrive, that curiosity, and that I can work with the students and we can learn together, and the excitement that comes from that. So I think it helps for the young faculty that they don't have the pressure, like you're not being forced to do it, but if you do it and it's done well, it's a great joy.
Sure.
And so that's, and then I also think it helps retention of our students, because they don't get that every year.
Right. I guess, if they see that they have the opportunities to do good research,
They're less likely to transfer.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say, for students, we've had them transfer and come back. They went to UT, they didn't have anything going.
Really?
They went to LSU, they have
Yeah.
to go. We're back.
Well, that's interesting, because UT has such a strong
Yes.
archaeology program.
They're not doing much up there at all.
Yeah, just nothing with undergraduates. Yeah.
That was one reservation I had when I came here in '96, is at that point I don't think we had as much research going on. And I said, well, I'm going to bring some, I don't know if you like it or not, but, because that's my deal, and they liked it, and so if I had the reservation, I know the students probably have that reservation, well, I want to do research, but if you're a small Christian institution, a lot of times you're thinking, I'm not going to get any research here because they didn't have the facilities, and that's not their orientation.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I came as a visiting professor covering John whilst he was on sabbatical, so I was only expecting to be here a year, and then it was, well, not too terrible, we'll keep you. But it really, I mean, I think I talked about this last time I came here. Really, my first 2 or 3 years here at Lee, I was looking for jobs elsewhere because I assumed I wouldn't be staying. And research was one of the things that kept me here. Being able to do it made a huge difference. So yeah, I think it really does pay off. All right. Well, given that there are both selfish and altruistic motives, are we going to get some conflicts of interest where our goals don't exactly mesh with what maybe the students need? What have I got here? All right, first question. Can undergraduates actually do the kind of research? But then we find ourselves filling the whole summer with fieldwork or just basic lab work, just running the lab protocols, which is essential to actually get any results, but is that as far as it ever goes with the students? Are they pretty much limited to those, I call it, menial tasks? Well, the lab work can be pretty tedious, frankly. Yeah, you see a lot of little tubes and tiny quantities, and yeah. How do folks in theology or humanities or in psychology, how do you handle this? Do you manage this? Do you find that you can, the issues these are some of the challenges, obviously. Do they even know enough literature and background theory to really get at the question that you're asking? Okay. Is your methodology so challenging? So I'm thinking of someone in history where maybe you have to read German and a whole bunch of different sources. Maybe there are methodological techniques in your field that it just takes a long time to learn how to do it. I don't know. Turning rocks is not hard. That's one of the reasons why I picked this project. And I think that's maybe that's an important point, is I did pick a project where students could do a lot of the labor quite easily. But yeah, it must be very hard for you.
Yeah. Depends on what your professional goals are. So I teach classics, so my students have to have, if they're going to do research with me, they have to have outstanding, just for an undergraduate, have to have outstanding levels of facility in either Greek or Latin.
Yes.
Hopefully both.
Have you had any?
I've had one, that's the bill, but he came to me late, and now he's in a good graduate program.
Right.
So, but it would depend on what your professional goals are.
Right.
They're at least, if they're more modest, I don't want to complete disjunct between my teaching in the classroom and my, quote-unquote, my research that I do outside of the classroom. Then you can meet that professional goal. So even if I get a student whose Greek isn't that great, reading the same text that I'm going to be working on, a book or an article, something like this. So I had a student do this his Greek wasn't that great. So he spent the semester reading Greek that's never been translated into modern language, doesn't have a critical edition. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, but it means unedited, messy, possibly poorly copied by a monk in the 1400s or something like that, Greek. And so we worked through that. Everything we read didn't make it into the book that I was working on at the time. Nonetheless, it was valuable for me, because then I knew the stuff isn't what I want to put in a book.
Okay.
I was able to teach it at the same, or in independent study. He gets in the acknowledgments of my books. He sees the sort of thing I do, though I was doing scads of stuff when he would leave my office, but he was getting a snippet of the
Okay.
thing we did. So, in that sense, that kills the two birds with one stone. It trains him. He has a love for it.
Sure.
I was able not to have a disjunct. cetera. So I think it would depend on what your professional
Right.
goals are.
Okay.
I'm curious, I have my selfish motive for being here. I would like to hear from other people in not hard sciences as to how to do research. I mean, I can do stuff with translating unedited text, and that's just a project in and of itself without having to have a thesis statement
Right.
or a hypothesis.
Sure.
But I'm curious as to what other possibilities there are. 'Cause then I have really bright students, but they're not into the languages, they're into something, they're more historians
Mhm.
or something like that. So I would be curious.
You know-
Not now, I don't want to derail
Right now, 'cause
everybody,
I
but
was
not now, but
wondering,
at some point.
I'm in communication, so I have the students, and I work with a particular class, interpersonal communication, and the students learn a particular communication script, like how do people generally break up, how a relationship disengagement, and they learn these little scripts, and then we go to a school, and they also had to do a lit review to learn it in the academic language, and then turn it into a more everyday language and teach it to students at Bachman Academy, which is kids with a fair amount of social deficits. And so they just have this one area, they have a lit review, they know exactly what's kind of tends to be the typical way, the right way, and they teach that, and I do a pre-test and a post-test for the students, Bachman students. But I want to take it so much further than that, because that's just, I mean, that's not publishable type of research. I can go to a conference and talk about it, but it needs, I don't know exactly how to take that and get them to a level for much stronger data.
Both of you using classes during the semester to do this? Yeah.
I'm curious, you said a lot of your students went on to non-sciencey sorts of things. What kind of students do you pick? What's your criterion for picking students to?
Well, that was actually going to be a point later on. We could bring that up right now. Why not? Because the reality is recruiting the right students is really important. Now, in terms of, I guess one of the questions I'm asking myself is the reason why a lot of my students do this menial stuff, so do the legwork, the slave labor for me, is it because I'm getting the wrong kinds of students? And is it because Sherry Casper and Laurie West, with their extremely medicine-related, high-tech, biochemistry of burn injuries, that kind of stuff, are they the ones that get all the good students? The really talented students. And it may be partly that, maybe that the students that are interested in jumping the river and chasing hellbenders aren't always the ones that are high level.
That tends to be my experience. The ones that
right,
really
sure.
are good at doing the presentation are really afraid of touching the mouse,
Yeah. I'm guessing that's probably not so much an issue in other disciplines. Probably your best students are knocking at your door to work with you. Is that fair to say? So they don't really start until the graduate program? Okay. All right. Yeah, so I guess it really, some students probably aren't ever going to do the higher level work. But I'm just afraid that I'm bad at taking any of my students to the next level. And I think this is one of the questions that I've asked myself or wrestled with, and that maybe you need to as well when you're thinking about doing undergraduate research, is how much failure, in other words, inability to produce good data for me, or whatever it is, whatever your outcomes are in your discipline, because they're just not, because they're learning, because they're students, because they're not experts. How much failure are you and your student willing to tolerate?
Yeah.
Well, so, I talked earlier on about one of the transferable skills is this attention to detail and quality control. And the only way you learn that, I think, is by messing it up and experiencing the consequences and learning the hard way that if you take shortcuts, you will lose out. So this is one of the things where I've decided I will let them fail early on. It's a bit like your kids, you know, you'll let them make mistakes up to a point. I think you should be willing to let them fail at least a bit. The challenge is that I found it harder and harder as my program has developed, my research program has developed, to be okay with failure. You know, because it can be costly. I mean, they can run through a lot of reagents or break stuff, which might be really, really expensive. And at this point, I actually have contracts with the state or the Forest Service where they expect me to produce something. So here's where this conflict of interest, I think, has started to rear its head for me, is that as my research has got better, hopefully, or at least it's got it's in some ways it's become, the need for quality research has gone up. And this is where you start hitting limits, working with undergraduates who aren't grad students. It's not they haven't got as much stake in it, do they? I mean, let's face it, when you were at grad school, you had a huge stake in your research. I mean, it was make or break. This was, you either got your thesis out or you were not going to continue in that discipline. You're going to be looking for something else. So grad students have a great deal of stake in the research. Undergraduates don't. All right. If it rains all day and they get to sit at camp and play cards, so be it. For a grad student, they're biting their teeth thinking about deadlines. So, how am I doing for time? Moving along. Okay, so.
So can you define failure specifically for your discipline? So it sounds like not even being able to get to the point where they're actually testing the data.
That's right.
Not
Yes.
testing the data and having the answer be no.
And that's fine, yeah. Yeah, we always try and let the data speak for itself. And if the data is saying that there's no story, then there's no story.
Right.
That's okay.
Well, that's a story in itself in science.
You're saying failure.
I'm talking about inability to even do this, to get data at all, to get reliable data, or to get data that you can trust. I mean, if they can't label their tubes, and they're giving me data for a particular hellbender from one river, and they've mislabeled it, and I'm thinking it's from another river, that's disastrous. I mean,
So that's failure on the part of the ability of the student,
Yes.
not external failure.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So that's what you're.
Yeah, really I'm talking about the limits of undergraduate abilities to actually do the stuff. Yeah.
But as your program has developed and proved itself and gotten more acclaim, aren't you able to attract students who are more talented away
Yeah,
from Lower West and
Funnily enough, actually, no, I've had it harder the last couple of years. Yeah.
I think you'd move more toward an almost graduate level student.
You'd think
who's
so.
willing to commit, a lot of time and.
The problem is by the time you get it, they're juniors.
Mm.
And senior, they graduate.
Well, we start pretty early
You start pretty early.
on some of ours
But I
because
mean,
we realize I want
kind
this
of
student for
created
2
ladders.
years so we can get something.
By the time you get them up to that
produced.
level, their senior year, and it's the last year.
I mean, they'd have to have a certain foundation of classes or they just simply don't know the material, but at least I saw pretty early.
So this last summer, I had one student who was on our ACA, and was young. In fact, she's young in terms of maturity as well, bright, and I didn't supervise her well enough. I really don't think I did. I let her. I was trying to build nest boxes out of concrete, okay, and I really focused my time on doing that and let her run. I mean, because it rained a whole bunch, we couldn't get out to the river, and so she had to do a lot more lab work than she probably wanted to do, and I pretty much left her to it. And frankly, she was just a little too young, I think, a little too inexperienced, and not proactive enough in getting help or working out when things were going wrong and how to fix it and all the rest. I feel like I let her down, actually. Now, she wants to work again this summer, so I wasn't too bad. Something worked. I mean, she got enough out of it that she wants more, so I'm going to try and do a little better, and I'm going to try and teach her some of the personal skills as well, in terms of not being passive. I mean, you've really got to be very proactive, I think, if you're going to do research. So I've learned, I think, a lot from that. But that may be your experience too, is that some students may actually just need a lot more of your time. I can't remember if I put that here or somewhere else. Oops. Do I have time to teach them? Well, sometimes it's not just teaching them the techniques, it's actually teaching them life skills that are necessary to do good research. So anyway, so this whole session really has been come up to this point for me is asking you, how can I give my undergrads a better research experience? Because I feel I've taken them through the point of collecting data and generally teaching them pretty well how to do that. I feel like I've generally, for many of my students, failed to take them to the next level, which is understand theory, really wrestling with the literature, and fighting through some data analysis. Somehow we just run out of time, or I'm not confident that I can teach. I mean, sometimes I don't even know how to do some of these data analyses. I mean, I'm learning as I'm going, so if I'm struggling with it, can I really expect my student to be able to master some software? And so I mean, this would be true in psychology as well. Would you think that sometimes the data analysis is the bit where it falls apart?
But again, in the context of where they began, okay, and listening to this whole conversation, it's been fascinating, and thinking of what this institution is, being a teaching institution, and we have to modify our goals before we came here, our research goals, and realizing that many of the students here would not have been exposed to any research had they continued on in a different path. They would have gone to a junior college or a community college. So the fact that they get this experience with qualified researchers or quality researchers and get these experiences, I keep hearing you go back to failure, whether or not I don't know that we fail. I really don't. I know we may fail in our own personal goals. And they're coming in, we have students who are drawn to psychology, sociology, anthropology with one view of that discipline, say psychology. And most of them think that it's about counseling and therapy, which is just one narrow view of psychology. In case you didn't know that. You guys said, well, we don't all own couches. Couches for therapy. We do own couches for therapy. And so to expose them to this, to give them a broader horizon, because that's where they're going. They're not graduate students. And you're right, you keep coming back to that, and I agree with you, is that they're not at that level of sophistication. But if we can expose them to this area of research and share our passion for it, that there are a few students who will get connected to the discipline in a different way through our research, and it will turn on the light, so to speak, for lack of better words. And so, yeah, give me the weak student. Give me the student who thought he hated math. Give me some time to work with him. Get him turned on to research, and before he graduates, he is doing some data analysis, and he's ready for graduate school. I know it sounds more summative, but I've been sitting here thinking and reflecting. You guys have been talking, and so I don't see it so problematic. And yes, there are problems. I mean, you do have loftier goals as an individual researcher, but I think we've all modified it.